Introduction. In the heart of ancient Greece, weddings were far more than just unions between individuals. They were social events, filled with tradition, strategy, and a dash of drama. Sure, love might have had a role, but let's face it, ancient Greek weddings were more about family alliances, dowries, and ensuring the gods were pleased enough to keep disaster at bay. Imagine a day filled with rituals that might leave even modern wedding planners stunned. The bride, hidden beneath a veil, looking both mysterious and regal, her heart probably racing more from ritual expectations than from the romance of it all. Meanwhile, the groom was no mere spectator either. His job wasn't just to look handsome. Oh no. He had his own rituals to perform, many of them designed to keep malevolent spirits at bay. Yes, because nothing says "I do" like warding off a few lingering curses. As families gathered, not only to celebrate but to watch closely, very closely, gifts and blessings were exchanged. Each moment of the wedding, from the pre-ceremony rites to the communal feast that followed, was steeped in meaning. Even seemingly joyful acts, like throwing nuts or singing hymns, carried deeper societal implications, serving purposes far beyond mere celebration. So, as we dive into the ancient Greek wedding experience, let's unravel the layers of tradition and symbolism, peppered with moments that might just shock us today. Who knew that weddings could be a mix of love, politics, superstition, and, well, a touch of the extraordinary? The history of wedding ceremonies in ancient Greece. Marriage in ancient Greece evolved significantly through the centuries, and as with most things in Greek society, weddings were deeply tied to the idea of order, status, and throughout three primary historical periods, archaic, classical, and Hellenistic, weddings shifted from purely strategic alliances to slightly more personal celebrations. But before we get too excited about any notion of romantic love, let's just say that ancient Greek weddings were more about family alliances than candle-lit vows. During the Archaic period, c. 800–480 BCE, marriage was a formal arrangement, carefully planned to ensure that both families involved benefited in some tangible way. Forget love. What mattered was family, honor, and, of course, property. Families negotiated marriages like modern corporations might negotiate mergers. They were all about who gained what and how much. These early weddings were private affairs, largely held within the confines of the home and attended by close family members. Public displays of affection? Not a chance. What truly mattered was the dowry, which was not just a gift, but a transaction that had long-term financial and social implicati. Rituals of the time were less about the couple and more about the families and community they represented. The symbolism of the wedding centered around fertility, because children were a big deal, continuity, and, importantly, the transfer of property. The couple themselves were secondary players in what was essentially a financial and political strategy. By the time the classical period rolled around, c. 480–323 BCE, things started to shift ever so slightly. While marriages were still mostly arranged, the emotional aspect of marriage began to gain a little more recognition. Emphasis on little. Sure, families still controlled who married whom, but the idea of the couple as individuals, rather than mere extensions of their families, began to creep into the consciousness of society. Wedding ceremonies in this era became more elaborate and public. Guests were invited, and the rituals began to focus more on the couple as the stars of the show, even if they were a bit like nervous actors with a carefully scripted role. Public processions became a feature, where the bride, veiled and adorned in her finest attire, would be led to her new home in full view of friends, family, and, let's be honest, half the town. But the central idea remained. Weddings were about alliances and ensuring social order. However, there was a growing recognition that personal happiness, though secondary, mattered. Couples might not have been soulmates, but they were, at the very least, expected to form a bond of mutual respect. Fast forward to the Hellenistic period, 323–31 BCE, and weddings became even more sophisticated and incorporated an increasing number of foreign influences. With the expansion of Greek culture through Alexander the Great's conquests, the influence of Eastern customs began to seep into wedding. These ceremonies could include everything from exotic decorations to new symbols brought in from other cultures. Greek weddings now had a little more flair, a combination of traditional values and borrowed opulence. Love, though still not the primary focus, was allowed to take up slightly more space in the conversation. The idea of the couple being in sync or compatible started to emerge, although it was still wrapped in the necessary veneer of family duty. The evolution of wedding practices from the archaic through to the Hellenistic period shows just how much weddings reflected the social and political priorities of the time. These ceremonies weren't just about uniting two people. They were events that united families, solidified alliances, and reinforced the structures that held Greek society together. The role of family and society. In ancient Greece, marriage was never simply a private affair between two individuals. Oh no, it was a multi-family, multi-generational operation with enough intrigue and drama to rival a modern soap opera. At the center of it all was the family unit, the cornerstone of Greek life, and this was particularly evident when it came to marriage. If you thought that choosing a life partner was hard now, imagine living in ancient Greece, where your family pretty much decided for you. Families, particularly the fathers, were responsible for arranging marriages, often prioritizing the economic and political benefits of such unions. Love, chemistry, common interests. Those were secondary concerns, if they were considered at all. What mattered was social standing and the merging of property. For the aristocracy, this was especially true. The aim was always to maintain or elevate social status through strategic marriages, often leading to unions that were more transactional than RO. Marriage was, in essence, an agreement between two families, not just two individuals. This focus on family alliance was so intense that in some cases, potential brides and grooms had never even met before their wedding day. The surprise came later, hopefully pleasant but no guarantees. Greek society expected that marriages would strengthen the family and, by extension, the broader social structure. Parents arranged marriages to secure alliances, and their children's preferences were often second. Women had even less say, being passed from the authority of their father to that of their husband. It wasn't just about two people joining lives. It was about ensuring that both families were properly aligned and that societal expectations were met. That's a lot of pressure for one wedding day. In Athens, for instance, marriage was seen as an economic and social contract, not as a personal choice. The goal was to perpetuate the family line, with each family hoping that the union would produce offspring, preferably male, who would continue the family name and inheritance. Wedding ceremonies were public spectacles, not private affairs. Community involvement was central, with neighbors, extended relatives, and friends participating in the celebrations. In a way, the entire process of marriage was designed to reinforce the social fabric of Greek life. The public nature of the ceremony demonstrated that a marriage wasn't just a personal or familial affair. It was a societal event that affected the broader community. Picture a village where everyone knew everyone's business. Now at a wedding, where the merging of two families wasn't just a formality, but a public declaration of their societal roles. Weddings became events for the community, reinforcing social bonds and ensuring that everyone, yes, everyone, knew what was going on. Pre-wedding rituals. In ancient Greece, the lead-up to the wedding was filled with a series of intricate and meaningful pre-wedding rituals, each designed to prepare the couple, not just for marriage, but for the roles they were about to assume within their families and society. These customs weren't just about excitement and anticipation, although there was plenty of that too. They were a blend of tradition, spiritual cleansing, and yes, a little bit of superstition to ensure everything went off. Imagine the excitement and anxiety that must have swirled around these events. For the bride, it wasn't just about getting cold feet. It was about following strict traditions that would transform her into a suitable wife in the eyes of her new family. For the groom, it was his first real chance to step into his role as the leader of his new household. And let's just say, the expectations were high. The marriage journey typically began with an engagement ceremony, a formal event where promises were made and gifts were exchanged. Though these weren't the fluffy engagement parties we think of today. The primary goal of this ceremony was to unite two families in a social and financial contract. The centerpiece of the engagement was the dowry, a sum of money or goods provided by the bride's family to the groom. Now, before you start thinking this is where the couple proclaimed undying love, think again. The engagement ceremony was more about setting the terms of the agreement. You could almost imagine it as a high-stakes business deal, with relatives and family friends as witnesses. And like any good deal, it often ended with a handshake and, of course, the blessings of the gods to seal the union. The dowry wasn't just a gift. It was essentially a financial guarantee, securing the bride's place in her new household and ensuring that she wouldn't be left destitute if anything went wrong. It also served as a signal of the bride's family's wealth and status. Families would sometimes haggle over these arrangements for weeks, ensuring that both parties walked away satisfied. You know how it is. What do you mean, no cattle in the deal? Next came the preparation of the bride, a process that involved a series of purification rituals. These weren't just relaxing spa days. They were rites meant to cleanse the bride of any impurities, both physical and spiritual, before she entered her new life as a married woman. The centerpiece of this ritual was the ceremonial bath, known as the lutra, usually in water drawn from a sacred source, such as a river or spring, believed to have cleansing properties. This wasn't just about cleanliness. It was symbolic of the bride's transformation, signifying that she was leaving her old life behind and stepping into a new role. The water used in the bath was sacred, and the act of bathing was considered a form of rebirth, washing away her past and preparing her for her future responsibilities. Afterward, she was adorned in her wedding garments, often richly decorated and designed to reflect her family's status. A veil would cover her face, symbolizing modesty and purity, as well as the transition from maidenhood to womanhood. In modern terms, it was less about hiding pimples and more about keeping away evil spirits. Some even believed the veil protected the bride from the evil eye, a sort of ancient "don't jinx it" charm. As the bride prepared for her wedding, she was surrounded by female relatives and friends in what we might call a pre-wedding girls' night, but with fewer cocktails and more solemn advice. This gathering wasn't just about chatting or gossiping, it was about passing down wisdom. Older women who had been through the rigors of marriage would offer guidance and support, advising the bride on how to navigate her new life, especially the delicate balance of managing a household and, well, her new husband. Think of it as an ancient version of a bridal shower, only instead of handing out lingerie, they probably gave out tips on keeping a good fire going, managing servants, and ensuring fertility. Yes, because have children was a piece of advice that wasn't optional back then. This bonding event highlighted the importance of female solidarity in a society where women's lives were largely centered around domestic duties. Plus, it's likely that a few nerves were soothed with laughter and stories, because what better way to calm a bride than a few humorous anecdotes about marital mishaps? Oh, and don't forget to hide the good wine from your mother-in-law. One of the most intriguing and, let's admit it, fun-sounding pre-wedding traditions was the stealing of the bride. This playful custom involved the groom's friends and male relatives attempting to steal the bride from her family before the wedding. The bride's family would pretend to defend her, often making a big show of it, while the groom's party tried to whisk her away. It was a symbolic act, representing the bride's transition from her family's home to her new life with her husband. It wasn't so much a kidnapping, so no need to call the ancient police, but rather a light-hearted way of marking the shift in family alliances. However, it's easy to imagine some of these defenses getting a little too enthusiastic, because after all, what's a wedding without a bit of competitive fun? Once stolen, the bride was escorted by the groom's party to her new home, marking the start of her marriage journey. Although this might sound a little out of place today, back then, it was an exciting part of the wedding festivities, much like our modern traditions of catching the bouquet or the best man's toast, only with more running and fewer floral arrangements. The final step before the actual wedding day involved offerings to the gods, especially to Hera, the goddess of marriage and women. Sacrifices, often small animals or symbolic items, were made to ensure divine favor and protection for the couple. It was crucial to gain the gods' blessings. After all, you didn't want Hera or Aphrodite annoyed on your wedding day. Bad omens and divine disapproval could spell disaster for the marriage. These offerings were typically conducted by the bride's family, accompanied by prayers for fertility, harmony, and prosperity in the marriage. Ancient Greeks took these divine appeals seriously. Who wouldn't want a bit of help from the gods when it came to navigating married life? The wedding ceremony. The wedding day in ancient Greece was a grand affair, filled with ritual, symbolism, and celebration. Unlike the multi-day extravaganzas of modern weddings, where the bride and groom might only get a few moments of peace, the ancient Greek wedding day was a whirlwind of events designed to not only unite the couple, but also to honor the gods, cement family alliances, and showcase the wealth and status of the families involved. The entire community played a role in this event, and no one was a passive observer. The atmosphere was one of excitement and reverence, as both families, neighbors, and even passers-by became part of the ceremony. It was about more than just two people. It was about merging families, celebrating social order, and ensuring divine favor. And, like any proper Greek celebration, there was always plenty of food, drink, and festivities to go around. One of the most significant parts of the wedding day was the procession, known as the ekdosis, which symbolized the transfer of the bride from her father's household to that of her husband. If this sounds simple, you haven't seen an ancient Greek wedding procession. It was anything but. The bride, dressed in elaborate garments and often veiled, would leave her home in the evening and make her way to the groom's house. She would be escorted by friends, family, and musicians. You could picture the scene, torches lighting the way as lyres and flutes played in the background, with everyone joining in the walk through the streets. The bride's journey was both literal and symbolic. She was leaving behind her childhood home and entering a new phase of life, and everyone in the community came along for the ride. The groom, meanwhile, would meet the procession halfway, and it wasn't a simple hello. There were often acts of mock resistance, where the groom and his party would attempt to kidnap the bride from her escort. This might sound a bit dramatic, but remember, ancient Greek weddings loved their symbolic gestures. The moment the bride was handed over to her husband-to-be, the seriousness of the occasion was sealed. She was now his responsibility. The procession ended at the groom's house, where the bride would step across the threshold, a moment filled with its own significance. Stepping into her new home represented her official transition into her role as wife and mistress of the household. In a twist that would make any 21st century bride cringe, the guests would throw fruit, nuts, and flowers at the couple. This wasn't just for fun. These offerings symbolized fertility, prosperity, and abundance, ensuring that the couple would enjoy a fruitful and bountiful life together. Imagine dodging a shower of nuts while trying to smile through your veil. Once the procession reached the groom's house, the ceremony itself would officially begin. It was a deeply religious affair, presided over by either a priest or a respected elder, depending on the family's social standing. The couple's union wasn't just a civil or social contract. It was a divine one, blessed and overseen by the gods themselves. The first part of the ceremony was the offering of sacrifices to the gods, especially Hera, the goddess of marriage and women, Zeus, and other deities important to the family. Livestock, such as sheep or goats, were often sacrificed, and these acts were believed to bring the blessings of the gods down upon the couple. You could almost imagine the sigh of relief from everyone present. If the gods were happy, the marriage would be smooth sailing, hopefully. For the bride and groom, the stakes were high. The gods' favor could mean the difference between a harmonious marriage and one fraught with discord. So, no pressure or anything. It was just your future hanging in the balance while someone slaughtered a sheep. Prayers and hymns would follow, asking for blessings of fertility, prosperity, and protection for the couple. These prayers weren't just whispered in the background. They were sung aloud by family members and sometimes even professional singe. Ancient Greeks believed in keeping the gods close to every important event, and a marriage was no exception. Unlike the long poetic wedding vows we know today, the vows in ancient Greece were simple but profound. The most important act was the symbolic joining of hands, where the bride and groom would clasp hands in front of the altar, solidifying their bond before the gods and their families. This act of hand-holding was more than just a physical gesture. It represented the unbreakable bond between the two. With the priest or elder presiding, the couple would promise loyalty, support, and fidelity. While these vows weren't long-winded, they carried enormous weight. The simplicity of the act belied its significance. The couple wasn't just promising these things to each other, but to their families and the gods. It was a public acknowledgement that they were now united in a lifelong partnership. As if the seriousness of the vows wasn't enough, the bride's veil would often be lifted at this point. It was more than just a romantic gesture. The lifting of the veil symbolized the bride's readiness to become a wife and to enter her new life. She was no longer shrouded in mystery but presented openly to her new family and community. You could almost feel the intensity of the moment. This was where the marriage truly began. No Greek ceremony was complete without food, and the wedding was no exception. The sacred meal shared by the couple and their families was one of the most important rituals of the day. Known as the gamos deipnon, this feast was a powerful metaphor for the union of the two families. By sharing food and drink, they were symbolically merging their lives, their fortunes, and their responsibilities. The meal wasn't just a celebration. It was a public acknowledgement that the two families were now linked by marriage. The guests weren't just there to enjoy a good meal. They were witnesses to the couple's union, and their presence was a form of social validation for the marriage. Wine flowed freely during these feasts, with guests toasting the health and prosperity of the couple. These toasts were often boisterous and filled with laughter, as the entire community joined in the celebration. If the gods were watching, they must have enjoyed a good party too. The couple would sit at the head of the table, honored as the center of attention, while their families mingled, chatted, and inevitably discussed their own plans for future weddings. The sacred banquet was a moment where the seriousness of the day gave way to joy and celebration. The food, the drink, the laughter. This was where everyone relaxed and enjoyed the moment, celebrating not just the couple, but the continuation of tradition and community. After the public festivities, the focus shifted to a more private and awkward part of the ceremony, the anacalypteria, or the bridal bedchamber ritual. This was the moment when the marriage was consummated, and yes, it was as formal as it sounds. The couple was escorted to their bedroom by their families, who would typically make a big show of leaving the couple alone to do the deed. This wasn't quite as intimate as it might seem today. In some regions, the couple was even given a bit of a send-off, complete with jokes, songs, and laughter, to make the situation a little less uncomfortable. In some instances, family members or even close friends waited nearby to ensure that the marriage was properly consummated, because in their eyes, it wasn't official until it was official. Imagine trying to focus with a Greek chorus giggling just outside your door. This might seem invasive to us, but for the ancient Greeks, ensuring that the marriage was consummated was an essential step in securing the future of the union, particularly in terms of fertility and future offspring. The pressure to perform was, let's say, palpable. The following morning, the couple would emerge from their bedchamber, officially united as husband and wife. At this point, the bride was fully integrated into her new household, and the couple was ready to begin their married life. Family members and guests would gather once again to offer congratulations, and the celebrations would continue, because in ancient Greece, why not stretch out a party as long as you can? The wedding ceremony in ancient Greece was not just about the couple, but about the intersection of family, community, and the divine. Every step of the process, from the procession to the feast to the private moments in the bedchamber, was imbued with meaning and tradition. It was a celebration of life, love, fertility, and social order. The entire community's involvement reflected the collective nature of marriage in Greek society. It wasn't just about two individuals. It was about two families coming together, about strengthening social bonds, and about ensuring the continuity of tradition. The gods, too, were present at every stage, their favor invoked to ensure a long, prosperous, and harmonious marriage. By the end of the wedding day, the couple was not just united in the eyes of their families, but also in the eyes of the gods. They had passed through the many stages of ritual, symbol, and celebration, and their new life together was officially underway. Symbols and sacred objects. In ancient Greek weddings, symbols and objects held profound meanings, often intertwining the physical and spiritual worlds. The Greeks believed that every part of the ceremony, from the bride's veil to the wreaths they wore, carried a significance that went far beyond mere decoration. These objects were not only aesthetic but also functional, imbued with magical, protective, and sometimes divine qualities to safeguard the couple's future. Let's take a moment to delve into the fascinating objects and symbols used in these ceremonies. Some were subtle, others more obvious, but each played a part in ensuring that the marriage would be blessed with prosperity, harmony, and fertility. And hey, if throwing a few walnuts at a bride helped guarantee a long and happy marriage, why not? One of the most important symbols used during ancient Greek wedding ceremonies was the crown of laurel. Both the bride and groom wore these crowns, woven from either laurel or olive branches. While today a crown might feel like overkill, in the context of an ancient Greek wedding, it was a symbol of honor and victory. Victory in love, victory in union, and perhaps even victory in surviving the intense wedding planning. The laurel crown was linked to Apollo, the god of the sun, music, poetry, and prophecy. By wearing this crown, the couple was invoking Apollo's blessing, asking for his favor and guidance in their married life. After all, what better way to start a marriage than by getting a god on your side? The symbolism here was clear. Marriage was seen as an achievement, something to be proud of, and by wearing the laurel crowns, the couple was declaring that they had won each other. So, if you ever wondered where the term winning in love came from, the Greeks might just have invented it. Fire was a powerful element in ancient Greek weddings, both practical and symbolic. One key moment during the ceremony was the lighting of the sacred flame, often from the bride's family hearth, which was then carried to the groom's home. This wasn't just a pretty gesture. The flame symbolized the life and warmth that the couple would bring to their new household together. The hearth fire was also a symbol of Hestia, the goddess of the hearth and home. By lighting this fire, The couple was invoking her protection over their new home and ensuring that their domestic life would be warm, loving, and full of harmony. It's like the ancient version of lighting a scented candle, but with much higher stakes. After the flame was transferred, it would burn in the couple's new home, a reminder of their shared life, their responsibilities to each other, and the warmth of the community that surrounded them. It symbolized not just physical warmth, but emotional and spiritual warmth as well. Everything that made a home a home. The bride's veil was one of the most iconic elements of the ancient Greek wedding ceremony. More than just an accessory to complete the bridal look, the veil was a powerful symbol of modesty, purity, and even protection. The Greeks believed that the veil shielded the bride from evil spirits that might be lurking around the ceremony, waiting to spoil her special day. Evil spirits, as we know, have terrible timing. The moment the groom lifted the veil during the ceremony was deeply significant. It was a symbolic act of unveiling not just the bride's face, but her entire self, her identity, her emotions, and her future as a wife. It represented the shift from the private world of her family to the public and social world of marriage, where she would take on new responsibilities and roles. This simple yet profound gesture signaled the start of their new life together, a life in which the bride and groom were no longer hidden from each other, but fully seen. It's a lot of pressure for one piece of fabric, but the Greeks were all about meaningful moments. No ancient Greek wedding would be complete without the showering of nuts, fruit, and grains over the couple. This tradition, much like our modern-day practice of throwing rice or confetti, was a symbolic gesture meant to ensure fertility, abundance, and prosperity for the newlyweds. Of course, dodging a barrage of nuts might seem like a strange way to start your married life, but in ancient Greece, this was a way for the community to offer their blessings for a prosperous future. The symbolism was rooted in agricultural practices. Grain and fruit were symbols of the earth's fertility, and by showering the couple with these, the community was expressing their hopes for a fertile marriage, lots of children, and a bountiful household. And let's face it, in a society that depended on farming and agriculture, fertility wasn't just a nice-to-have. It was essential for survival. Imagine trying to look graceful while getting pelted with figs and nuts. It probably wasn't easy, but it was all for a good cause. Plus, it gave the wedding guests something fun to do, and probably sparked a few laughs too. Ancient Greek weddings weren't just about love and symbolism. They were also about practicality. Enter the wedding gifts, which were as crucial to the ceremony as any of the other rituals. These gifts, often given by the families, were designed to help the couple start their new life together. Typical gifts included household items like pots, textiles, and even livestock, practical things that would help the couple establish their home. The gifts were also symbolic of the support that the families would provide to the couple throughout their marriage. It was a way of saying, "We're invested in your future, and we'll help you along the way." While the gifts themselves were useful, the gesture behind them was even more important, ensuring that the new couple had the tools they needed to build a successful life together. Once the ceremony was over and the sacred objects put away, it was time for the real fun to begin, the post-wedding festivities. Ancient Greeks knew how to throw a party, and weddings were the perfect occasion for a feast filled with wine, food, and endless dancing. Dancing wasn't just a way to celebrate the newlyweds. It was a way to bond the community. Guests would often join in circle dances, holding hands and spinning around in joyous unity. The couple would also be expected to join, symbolically entering into this new phase of their life surrounded by the love and support of their friends and family. If you think about it, it's not unlike the first dance we see at modern weddings, only with a lot more people joining in. Feasting was a huge part of ancient Greek life, and weddings were no exception. The wedding banquet was often a lavish spread, and the entire community was invited to share in the meal. The symbolism was simple, By eating together, the two families were officially united, sharing not just food, but their lives and futures. Guests would toast to the couple's health and prosperity, and the celebrations could go on for days. Greek weddings were marathons, not sprints. In between the dancing and feasting, there were often games and contests, adding an element of fun and competition to the festivities. Whether it was a race, a drinking contest, or something sillier, these games were all part of the communal joy that surrounded a wedding. And let's be honest, after all the seriousness of the rituals, everyone deserved to let loose. The wedding rituals of ancient Greece may seem foreign, strange, or even humorous to us today, but they were deeply meaningful for the people who practiced them. Every detail, from the laurel crowns to the bedchamber ritual, carried with it centuries of tradition, belief, and cultural importance. Marriage was not just a union between two people, it was a sacred contract blessed by the gods, a merging of families, and a foundation for the future of the community. The symbols and objects used in these ceremonies reflected the Greeks' views on life, love, fertility, and the divine, and they helped cement the importance of marriage as a social and spiritual institution. As we look back at these ancient practices, we can see echoes of them in our modern weddings. The lifting of the veil, the symbolic exchange of rings, the throwing of confetti, and the wedding feast are all traditions that have evolved but still carry the same core meanings. Even if we no longer toss nuts or demand that a wedding feast last 3 days, the heart of these rituals, bringing people together, celebrating love, and invoking good fortune, remains. So, the next time you attend a wedding or celebrate a union, remember that behind the modern-day traditions lies a long history of love, community, and sometimes a little bit of ancient Greek humor.
By my side, intense, strong, no fear to face, nowhere to hide, intense. I subscribe to this channel, click like today, because content like this just lights my way, intense and slow.